Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called Medical Qigong for Healing and Transformation. Clear stagnant energy, activate vital qi, and develop the skills that support others. My name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and I'm really blessed to be with you here, getting to explore how an ancient Chinese practice can help transform our modern lives and ultimately our modern world. We're going to get to explore how medical Qigong can really be something that we do for ourselves and even activate as part of our service to others with one of the pioneers in the West of this work. His name is Dr. Roger Yanka. He's a doctor of Chinese medicine, OMD. He's a director, Institute of Integral Qigong and Tai Chi. And he's really spent decades at the forefront of bridging East and West and creating a more holistic paradigm for health and well-being on the personal level, extending that all the way into the collective. So Dr. Yanka, I'll just call you Roger as we know each other. Roger, thank you so much for joining us here today.
What a pleasure, Stephen, and hello to everyone. Thrilled to be here. And yes, let's just jump in and have some fun with it.
Well, I'm going to say right up front that we are going to get some very valuable insights today. And today is also a bit of a sneak preview for a brand new professional level training that we're going to be doing with Roger called Medical Qigong Training for Healers and Leaders. Very excited about this. It's a deeper dive, 20 weeks, lots of dimensions to it. We're going to share more about that in the latter half of the hour. So more to come with Roger. So Roger, I know one of the things that's always sweet and beautiful about starting an hour with you is you like to just center us with a practice. So why don't you do that now?
Thank you, sir. Okay, so I'm going to play this gong. We'll do it 3 times. And think to yourself, adjusting my posture, deepening my breath, clearing my mind. Back to you, Stephen.
What I love about that, Roger, is that it is so clear that we're here to harmonize our energy. It goes beyond the words, the teachings, that there is this harmonization with a deeper current of life force that just the gong can do, but also medical Qigong practice. So I'd for you to share a little bit about your journey and why, growing up in the West, that you decided to dive so deep into this Eastern lineage and become a bridge of worlds.
Yeah, so I'm from a place called Cincinnati, Ohio, and pretty typical middle American upbringing. Big baseball team in my town when I was a little kid. You know, when people would say, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" I would say, "I want to be a baseball player." And then when I was around 9 years old, my dad died. And after that, people would ask me what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I would say, I want to be a doctor. And at that point, I thought that doctors would keep people from dying. When I went to medical school, pre-med, I couldn't find anybody who actually understood how to keep people well. And that was really what I was looking for, the whole concept of, can we be a part of how, can a doctor be a part of how an individual gets the information that they need to be able to maximize their well-being? And that just wasn't going on. The phrase was, well, you know, we're medical doctors. We diagnose and treat diseases. If you want to do anything around prevention of disease, you have to study something else. And so I dropped out of medical school and studied world literature and philosophy and all of that, and found my way to the traditions of Ayurvedic medicine and traditional Chinese medicine and native peoples' shamanic medical traditions and so forth, all of which are based on the whole idea of maximizing well-being as the first resort as opposed to the last resort. And very inspiring. Studied Chinese medicine in Hawaii, been to China many times, have 35 years clinical practice. Chinese medicine is just, I don't know, it's miraculous, fascinating, mysterious, profound. And eventually, though, I realized that the big power of all these shamanic healing systems is the practice of living. And in the Chinese tradition, the wellness program, which is probably as much as 30 or 50,000 years old, there's a name for that, and it's called Yang Sheng. And Yang Sheng doesn't mean diagnose and treat disease. Yang Sheng means nourishing all the aspects of our life for maximum comfort, maximum function, maximum even character development, maximum association with how to navigate the complexities of, shall we say, our social and political lives. So incredible and just amazingly rewarding. And so when I retired from the clinical practice, I got into being the director of the Institute of Integral Qigong and Tai Chi, where we have trained nearly 5,000 people to be practice leaders and teachers in their communities. And wow, how rewarding, just amazing. And I'm so thankful and blessed, and I'm thrilled to be with you here today to discuss this next program.
Well, I'd love to just visualize the 5,000 people shifting their communities,
Yes.
activating this larger holistic paradigm for how we move in the world. And so I'd love to just explore some of those foundations today. So let's start with the three treasures of medical Qigong and why those three treasures really have such a central role.
Yeah. So isn't it interesting that the Trinity, or any kind of, shall we say, set aside of three powers, is very common in religions and philosophies and cultural traditions and so forth. And the Chinese tradition is loaded with these powerful three paradigms. And today we'll just focus on one, although as we get deeper into our training, we'll be talking about a whole array of versions of the three treasures. For right now, we'll just talk about the fact that we each have the treasure of a body, a mind, and a spirit. And those three features, when they are what we might want to call integrated, and isn't it interesting that we're in a period of, shall we say, development of healthcare and medicine, where there's a lot of talk about integrative medicine. And one definition of integrative medicine is that medical doctors and acupuncturists and chiropractors and herbalists are all integrating into patient care. But another definition of integrative medicine is medicine that's based on supporting an individual in becoming more integrated within their own being. And that integration is to basically bring the body function into alignment with the mind and spirit function. Or one of the better ways to say this is to bring the spirit function into association with the mental consciousness self, to then maximize the function of the body. So instead of saying body, mind, spirit, we could easily say spirit, mind, body. But in either case, the idea is to bring these three aspects of our being into alignment for the fulfillment of the highest expression of our essential nature in this life.
Love it. And I know that the four foundations are also really or I'm sorry, the four dimensions of Qigong are really important. So maybe can weave a little understanding of how those connect to the three treasures.
Absolutely. So in the one of the great powers of Qigong and the versions of Qigong in other cultures, so we could call Qigong Chinese yoga. Uh, Yoga and Qigong and Tai Chi are all kind of based in Kung Fu from the Chinese side, are all based on this whole idea of integrating these three treasures, and the methodologies or the dimensions of these practices across all cultures are to have four parts. There's the body part, and by the way, everybody, just lengthen your spine and lift head on top, shoulders drop, fingers soft. Then there's the breath part. Deepen the breath, and there's just a mountain of things that change within the human body when we purposefully change the depth and pace of the breath. And then there's the mind focusing part, which is to be conscious of ourselves, both feeling the sensory aspect of ourselves as well as feeling the emotional aspect of ourselves, and weaving the body, the breath, and the mind all together into these practices, and then using the fourth dimension, which is self-applied massage, to deliver the healing resources. The Chinese would call that the qi, delivering the healing resources to the parts of the system that need it the most. So four dimensions woven, sometimes more focus on breath, sometimes more focus on meditation, sometimes more focus on movement. Often, however, weaving them all in pretty much, shall we say, equal measure of focus, and then as a kind of crescendo of the whole process in the healing context, to use the self-applied massage to direct the healing resources to the parts that need it the most. And there are five unique types of self-applied massage: pressing, stroking, holding, like Reiki holding, and tapping. And then one of the most amazing parts of massage in the Chinese tradition is massaging the qi field. And once we get into this a ways, what happens is that you can actually feel there's some kind of magnetic field factor that is present in the human system. And we can actually develop the capacity to have a sensation of feeling, of actually massaging something about ourselves that isn't actually the physical body.
Very cool. I know that one of the central pillars of Chinese medicine is this balancing of yin and yang, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about that and how that integrates with what you've already talked about.
Yeah, so it's fascinating to think about the nature of the world, because the Chinese got to how the yin and the yang are a part of our self by being in the world and wondering about how the world works. And you can imagine that maybe somewhere around 50 to 100,000 years ago or more, humans were communicating with each other. They were building fires. They were developing families. They had people who were experts in health and medicine. They had experts in farming. They had expert hunters. They had expert warriors. They had expert artists. And they were all in the process of this beautiful sort of investigation of the nature of the world and then applying it to ourselves. So let's just do a little of that right now. So if we think to ourselves, what is down below us? Well, it's a big ball of rock, dirt, whatever you want to call it. It's a substance. What is above us? Well, it's openness. So the relationship between openness and substance is they're like the opposite of each other. Just like that circle that has the two, looks like fish, well, there's one right there. That image is expressive of how the sky and the earth, or the water that's on the earth, are in a dualistic relationship with each other. The top of myself is in a kind of contrasting relationship with the bottom of myself. If I think of my feet, they're not like my head, and my head is not like my feet. And so then think of a tree. What is the part of the tree that's in the ground? That's roots. And what is the part of the tree that's above? And that's leaves and fruit and flowers. And so the contrast of the root relative to the flowers and the fruit, that's a yin-yang relationship. Think about the sun and the moon. They're both very profound presences in our lives, and yet they are very, very different, almost oppositional, if we could say it that way, or dualistic. And then take the summer and the winter. So then take all of those dualistic features and now apply them to ourselves. So we have a part of ourself which is like the earth, call that the body. We have a part of ourself which is not a substance, call that the spirit or consciousness. So the yin and the yang, the yin is the body, the yang is the consciousness. What about the breath, which is based on air, which basically is not a substance, relative to the blood, which is in fact very definitively a substance? And then think about the work that we do. Like, for instance, today I was making compost. That's very physical, and my hands are in the dirt. And then now I'm in a conversation with you, which is very definitively, shall we say, founded in the fact that we're discussing ideas which do not have substance. And then finally, I'll say that in the Chinese tradition, the paradigm that we learn as we're learning about the healthcare system of China is that we have organs that are more yin and organs that are more yang. And we won't go to detail on that for right now. But then there's also the relationship between the functions of these organs and the emotional states that are associated with these organs, all of which then derive from this idea that the earth is below us, the sky is above us, the sun and the moon are contrasting dualistic features of our lives. Air, and like the air that we breathe and the blood that flows within us, all these things are contrasting. And I think that the foundational ideal that this all gets to, which is really interesting in the Chinese tradition, is that is all duality. So in a way, we live in a world where there's night and day. That's a duality. We live in a world where time is passing. We also reflect on the possibility that there's some aspect of ourselves that's beyond time. And one of the beautiful poetic promises of Chinese medicine, including medical Qigong, is that we bring the dualistic aspects of ourselves into harmony. And that gives us an open pathway to what we could call the non-dual. And one of the most powerful healing aspects of yoga and Qigong and all the great shamanic traditions is the whole idea of becoming balanced, harmonious, and integrated in such a way as to open ourselves to personal revelation. And as we move into personal revelation, we can get answers to predicaments that we didn't have access to when we were just living in the dualistic aspect of ourselves. So the concept of bringing yin and yang into balance for the body, yin and yang into the balance for the emotional self, and then opening like a portal to a more thorough infusion of our, I don't know, you want to call that the eternal nature or the essential self, which then promises to give us insights that we wouldn't necessarily be able to have gotten if we weren't more integrated. And then, of course, those insights lead to choices, and those choices lead to better relationships, healthier, more energetic days, better sleep, and more availability of the creative self as opposed to the, shall we say, reactive self.
Hmm. Well, it's the multidimensionality is really fascinating to me. And so, how have you seen like this balancing of the emotional through the spiritual actually outpicture in terms of shifting physical disease as well?
Well, it turns out that physical disease is, we always knew this. Our grandmother's grandmother knew this, that if we take good care of our family, if we have a sense of ethical living, if we grow our own food, and so all these things are choices. So now, true, when you're born into a family that doesn't grow its own food, that wasn't your choice. And maybe you become habituated to the fact that you don't need to grow food, and that is your choice. Then you have to look at your culture and ask the question, is my culture supporting me in being self-reliant? And if we look at education in our society, and if we look at, I hope you don't mind me saying, the medical industrial complex, we're basically not typically encouraged to be self-reliant. And so the whole discernment process actually ends up being the biggest piece. So, and you asked the question perfectly. So how does this influx of more, shall we say, exposure to our transcendental nature translate into consciousness, which then translates into the body? And there's two ways. One is decisions. In other words, when I go to the refrigerator and open the refrigerator, why am I there? When I'm in the grocery store and I'm shopping, what are my decision-making processes that have to do with buying this or buying that? And so those are the practical choice-making features. But then there's the other part, which has to do with this process that is ubiquitous across all the shamanic cultures, including the yogis and the Buddhists and the shamans, North and South America, you know, the druids of Europe and so forth. And that is the whole process of being more self-aware and being more oriented to nature, as opposed, and I look over here because there's a window here and there's trees out there and it's green and inspiring. So as we bring ourselves into a greater association with nature, including things like the solstices, the equinoxes, and the phasing of the moon, and you know, personally, I'm very, very involved in like watching the moon and celebrating the equinoxes and the solstices. I don't know if it's because I practice Qigong or because I was in relationships with Native American shamans. But it seems like as I become more oriented to the potential of myself and then also expose myself to the rhythms of nature, my awareness trends towards different types of decisions and also to different types of relationships. And there's that whole idea that you will tend to be a lot like the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And what I've found through this whole process is that the 5 people that I spend my time with are just extraordinary human beings. And I didn't always have that as a part of my life. And so it's like a whole array of awarenesses and choices. And one of the other things that happens is we become more aware of our own natural power. We become more philosophical and tend to be more compassionate. So now we're talking about things that, like, the Buddha would say, if you want to live a good life, follow the Eightfold Path, and that's right work and right speech and right relationships and so forth. So this becomes a kind of philosophical framework that we live into, which then tends to create better moment-to-moment choices, which then leads to less encumbered function, which then leads to greater vitality.
I'd love to hear you share a little bit about some of the various ways. I mean, the medical qigong is kind of getting integrated, all the 5,000 people that you've trained. How is it getting into different systems and approaches and offerings in a way that really does, shift the baseline for health and wellness?
Yeah, so right now we're negotiating with some people, some of our graduates who are going to be doing a training program, much like the one that we're going to be doing at a YMCA. We've been doing a lot of these trainings with the Veterans Administration. And so what that means is that people who are working in the VA, who are counselors and nurses and health coaches and recreational therapists, are actually bringing Qigong into their meetings with veterans who are aspiring in the VA has a beautiful program that's been going now for about 15, 20 years called Whole Health. So those veterans who have become oriented to the power of whole health, which is basically everything that we've been talking about, including the choice making, which the Chinese call Yang Sheng, which is translated into nourishing life. So it's a very, very powerful, cost-saving, health maximizing program in the VA. And then a lot of the people that we work with social service agencies, retirement centers, elementary, high school, university, corporations, and even some, we have more than one of our people works with with golfers. So, because golf is, in the end, yeah, it's physical and so forth, and you're out and walking and breathing, and that's all good. But it's also, if you want to be if you want to get the best score in golf, you have to stay calm. And it's pretty easy to blow it and then get excited, and particularly if you got like a 25 cents per hole bet going, and now you're banging your club into the sand and the sand trap and so forth. So to just to become more steady, and a lot of athletes, of course, are using qigong and qigong like, including yoga and mindfulness. So it's pretty much delivering everywhere. And so now we're in this atmosphere where there's a lot of interest on the parts of average citizens about this one question, which is there more that I can do for my health and well-being than just waiting until I get sick to have a visit with my doctor who will then tell me what I should do. Is there something that I can do to limit the amount of time with doctors that I need, which is going to be a contribution to my society? I mean, if I don't go for that doctor visit, then that money stays in the system for somebody else who might need it more. And the last thing I'll say here, and it's not exactly an answer to your question, but yeah, I think it is. And that is that I've been saying for a long time, self-care is patriotic. And more recently, I've been hearing people who are like decision makers in the healthcare system pointing to the idea that self-care is not only economically a good idea for our society, but it also has something to do with like enhancing the fabric of our self-reliance, certainly, and then, you know, contributing perhaps even to our citizenship.
It definitely gets into some really wide applications, and it's exciting to hear about how many different arenas are adopting medical Qigong practices. I want to also give you a little space today to give us a demonstration. I know you wanted to do something called the Cleansing the Qi Field medical Qigong practice, so people really get a flavor for the kind of work you're doing.
Yes, shall we do that now?
Yes.
Excellent, here we go. I invite people to stand. And there's this idea that the human body has a magnetic field. Some cultures call this like the aura or the chi matrix. And so imagine that there is such a field. And then you're probably asking, is that really possible? And the answer to that question is that anywhere ions are moving, it, by the laws of physics, creates a magnetic field. So it's impossible that the human system doesn't have a magnetic field. It is not only possible and probable, but definitive that the human system has a magnetic field. And so this practice, which we'll just do for a few moments, has to do with clearing the field, clearing the chi field. And it goes like this. Each of your hands is going to pass in front of your face, and all the cultures think that there's a very important point here between the eyebrows. We'll call it the third eye for right now. Sometimes it's called the pineal point. In Chinese medicine, it's called yin tang, yin tang. And so we're going to be sweeping. Notice that I'm turning my body just a little bit, sweeping past my third eye through the field. And this hand then comes down. Then the other hand rises up and does the same thing, going the other way. Notice that the bottom hand is down at the level of my belly, which is another very important feature of the human in Chinese medicine, which is called the lower elixir field. So up here is the upper elixir field. Down here is the lower elixir field. And so sweeping here, and the bottom hand is passing my lower, it's called the Dan Tian, Dan Tian. Dan means elixir. Field is Tian, Dan Tian. Sweeping, bottom hand comes up, top hand goes down, sweeping. Now let's link the breath. Breathe in. Exhale, sweeping. Breathe in. Exhale, sweeping, clearing, cleansing. So we have an idea that we're holding in our mind, and that is that we are cleansing the chi field. And the chi is associated with function, so we're maximizing functional capacity. The breath is deep, and so we are getting all the benefits of deep breathing, which have a lot to do with calming the nervous system. Calming the nervous system has a huge influence on the function of all the organs, creates healing neurotransmitters, harmonizes the autonomic nervous system, lowers blood pressure, and so exhale, sweeping, cleansing, clearing, big deep breath, sweeping, cleansing, clearing. And notice that I'm shifting my weight. So we want to have as many of the muscles in the body engaged and coordinating. And when we do that, when we purposefully coordinate the function of the movement of our limbs, including shifting our weight and moving our arms around and lengthening our spine and putting our head up on top, dropping our shoulders, so all of these things are contributing to brain plasticity. Brain plasticity is the capacity of the brain to keep track of a multitude of things, which of course is, what could be more powerful than sustaining brain functionality for the rest of our lives? So let's do this pass 2 more times. Exhaling. And then exhaling. And then cross your hands in front. Open your hands and thrust your hands towards the earth. And then raise up as if you're gathering precious resources from nature. And then bathe yourself as if you are infusing yourself with fresh chi. So we cleansed the chi matrix. Now we're restoring and sending chi, like infusing chi into the organs. One more. Big breath in. And exhale, slowly bathing yourself in chi. And imagine or feel, if you can, or if you do, a feeling of calm, maybe even a sensibility of some kind of field, magnetic field. Place your hands on your belly button. Sink, lengthen. One more big deep breath. Exhale very slowly. And now we'll close, and closing goes like this. You just reach around to the sides and bathe yourself one more time. And then let's just take a moment to make a bow to all the great wizards who invented these things for empowering the humans so long ago. And isn't it amazing that these ideas are still vibrant in our societies today?
What what a beautiful practice, and it's really clear. I love the way you're weaving in the deeper philosophical roots into this. It's not, these are not separate things, from the spiritual teachings and the philosophical to the practical energetic shifts in our body. It's all one integrated approach, and I love that.
Yeah, and one thing to notice is that in Qigong, there's a lot of activity with the arms. And it's true that we do shift our weight, and sometimes there are stepping methodologies. But one of the most interesting bits of research I ever heard of was the fact that the profession that has the most long-living characters is the orchestra leaders. And they're always doing lots of this. And also, one of the things that I've learned in studying medicine, and particularly because heart disease is a very common sort of end of life problem, to understand how moving the arms has a lot to do with sustaining the integrity of the vascular system as it springs from the heart. It's just amazing. And then the last thing I'll say, kind of going in the direction of the whole idea of medical Qigong, not so much being based on medical disorders, but instead being based on the fact that the body makes medicine. So we don't call medical Qigong because it's about treating disorders. We call it medical Qigong because it's about turning on the natural capacity of the human system to heal itself through elixirs or medicines that are produced within our own being.
So profound. Well, Roger, I think now's a good time to talk a little more explicitly about the upcoming professional level training that you're going to be doing, which is, to be clear, is open to people who just want to develop this practice themselves for personal benefits, or who want to apply it in different professional contexts as well. So we're very excited that Roger's agreed to teach this program. It's a deep dive, it's profound, it's going to give you real skills that you can build on for yourself and others for years to come. So the name of this training is called Medical Qigong Training for Healers and Leaders: Practical Tools for Revitalizing Health, Balancing Emotions, and Empowering Others with the Medicine Within, which Roger has just so eloquently described. You can find out the URL medicalqigonghealer.com, medicalqigonghealer.com. And this is really an opportunity to harvest the wisdom from decades of study and application. The 5,000 people who have already been trained really receive that in its most potentized form that Roger can offer you. And so you can find it all again at the URL medicalqigonghealer.com. And we're going to go through this program. Really, it's an opportunity for you to drink deeply from this ancient well of wisdom, apply it in very practical ways in your life and the life of others, and really have a community of people who can reinforce the learnings with each other. It is so helpful to any form of spiritual and health practice as well. So it's a 20-week training. It's quite in depth. And Roger, I'd love for you to share, first of all, your intentions for what people will emerge with by investing the 20 weeks with you.
Yeah, well, you know, it is our mission and vision at the Institute of Integral Qigong and Tai Chi to basically be a part of how the world is a better place. And of course, for the world to be a better place, it has to have good people, great people, and particularly people who take the role of a leader in their community to be able to help others realize some of the very accessible things that we can do for ourselves to turn on the medicine within. So our goal, we have a mantra, and it goes like this: we train thousands, and now we're almost to 5,000. We train thousands to inspire millions to heal themselves for free. So, you know, this is just one more chunk of how we're doing that. And I'm, really honored that Shift Network is collaborating with us to reach even further into our society, to find those people who are inclined to be exemplars, shall we say. And by the way, you don't have to be a teacher to be an exemplar. A person who has a practice and shows signs of evolving in their lives, they're exemplars too.
Well, we have 20 different modules, each of which is going to be very in-depth. We don't have time to go through all of them in detail here, but I'll just read out some titles and we'll kind of stop here and there to give a preview of what's coming.
Sounds great.
Module 1 is Activate the Healer Within with the core principles of Chinese mind-body Qigong. Qi, Yin, and Yang, the three treasures in the four dimensions of Qigong, a much deeper dive into some of what Roger shared today. Module 2, Awaken the Medicine Within for greater self-regulation and self-healing through accessible medical Qigong and Qi cultivation practices. Module 3, Teaching Medical Qigong, making it easy, accessible, fun, and transformative. Maybe share a little bit more about some of the teaching principles behind getting this work out.
Yeah. So it turns out that being specific about the gestures is secondary to the atmosphere that the teacher creates. So when we do these, a lot of the people that we train have online followings and do their practice sessions online. A lot of the people that we do this with are working live in the Veterans Administration, in the YMCA, school systems, hospitals, etc. And what we found over the IIQTC was actually became an institute in the year 2000. And so we've got a lot of experience with this now. And what we've found is that what really sticks with people is the lighthearted class environment. And so a lot of times people, when they are learning to do something that they're going to bring to other people, they feel like they really need to get it right. And how we get this right is to keep it accessible, lighthearted, fun, and inspiring. And so everything about this training is in support of not only learning these practices and getting them as well as we can, but also understanding that it's not how accurately we do the practices that is really the power. The power is in providing a space where people feel comfortable, have some fun, and by doing so, what happens is that in your classes, when you do lead classes, or when you do your practice on your own, when you do that, you will have a palpable sense of a shift within your own being. And what that shift is basically the human system making medicine for the body and the mind, and even in some beautiful way, the spirit of our own being.
We then go into Module 4, Reduce Stress and Find Balance and Vitality with Yang Sheng, the ancient wellness program, which we talked about a little bit about today. Module 5, the Qi Engine, a deeper exploration of movement and breath to inspire healing and transformation. We haven't really talked as much about the breath practices. Want to share a little more there?
Yeah, so, wow, if there's anything that is sort of like the driver of how Qigong, and perhaps we could say yoga as well here, is the fact that the breath practice is this massive influence. And probably the reason why we don't talk about breath practice so much is that we're just always breathing. No, we're not always doing Qigong gestures, and we're not always doing yoga gestures, but we are always breathing. And so there's this kind of not very intelligent idea that, look, I'm breathing all the time. Hey, no problem. And the difference is that when we breathe as we usually breathe, which is about 16 to 22 breaths per minute, we are actually in a breath pace that is more associated with disease than it is with well-being. And then if we shift that pace to fewer breaths per minute, and the scientific research shows that if we slow the breath down, which we were doing earlier, to somewhere around 10 or less breaths a minute, it has these, a whole variety. We will go into beautiful detail on all of this in the course, a whole variety of physiological changes, which can actually then lead to emotional changes because of the fact that it shifts the neurotransmitter mix in the body, which then causes a sense of relief, and even in some cases, not only a relief of our stress, but also relief of pain, and an increase in the capacity of the system to digest and sleep. So, and one of the most powerful things that people can do for their sleep is learn breath practice, whether it's to put themselves to sleep or when they wake up at night and then get kind of worried about what they didn't do or should have done or need to do. You can use breath practice to put yourself to sleep very quickly, and that is one of the most powerful things. The insomnia is one of the worst and most prevalent chronic diseases in the world. And so the breath portion of these practices, which you can use without doing the movements, very, very powerful in shifting the internal environment, shifting the neurotransmitters, and bringing on the state of rest.
Module 6 then goes into a guest teacher, William Douglas, a prominent Qigong teacher. Qigong is powerful preventative medicine. Module 7, multiply the power of the Qi and maximize healing benefits with mind, focus, and self-applied massage. We've share a little bit about the massage component of this as well.
Yeah, and I want to just say one thing about the guest is this gentleman who's going to be joining us, his name is Bill Douglas. He is the founder of what's called World Tai Chi and Qigong Day, which has been going on for around the same amount of time as the Institute of Integral Qigong and Tai Chi. And it is a day at the Saturday at the end of April in which millions of people all around the world practice Qigong and Tai Chi at their 10 a.m., meaning that it's just going all the way around the world. This guy founded that, and he's written a bunch of really interesting books, not to be missed. And then on the massage, as we mentioned earlier, there are all these different types of massage, the 5 types that I talked about earlier. And the body practice and the breath practice, that's the Qi engine, that turns on the medicine. And then the meditation holds the present moment focus and decreases distraction. And then the massage, as we mobilize the medicine within, the massage is used to direct the Qi to the parts that need it the most. So it's a very, very powerful thing. And one of the things that's really cool about massage is when people are, they say, I don't have time for all this stuff. But it turns out when you're sitting on your couch watching television, you can be massaging your hands or your feet without depreciating, shall we say, the entertainment value of what you're watching. So it's like a kind of a marvel of, what do they call that when you can do more than one thing at once? Multitasking. Mm-hmm. Massaging yourself while you're watching TV is one of the most profound multitasking breakthroughs in the history of the human race.
There's so much in each of these modules, so we'll just kind of keep going here. Module 8 goes into learn to transform any Qigong into medical Qigong with the 4 dimensions, intention and focus. That's a really important point. Module 9, harness long-term benefits and power up your personal practice with your own internal functional energy. Module 10, understand the rivers of Qi, the 12 organ channels of Qi to restore organ function, prevent disease, and promote well-being. That's very specific in terms of how all the Qi flows to specific organs. I want to share a little bit more about why that's really central to medical Qigong?
Yeah, and there's another one coming up that I'll lump in here so you don't have to stop there, is what the Chinese call the 5 phases or the 5 elements. And so you've got the Qi is everywhere. And then there's the yin qi of the the night, the rest, and the yang qi of the day, which is action, and then how that all, shall we say, infuses the human system is that the yang qi comes from boundlessness of sky, and the yin qi comes from the solidity and substantialness of the earth. The yin qi is rising in relationship to 6 organ channels or meridians or circuits of the qi, and the yang qi is descending to support the yang organs. And then the whole thing is, shall we say, flowing and circulating, and then we want to bring ourselves into a relationship with this flow and understand the nature of flow, as opposed reactivity, that has a feeling, and then flow, that has a feeling. And when we're reactive, what's happening is the qi is encumbered and restrained. And when we're in flow, the qi system is open and flowing. And so that's very powerful. And then the 5 elements are another way, another, shall we say, view of how the qi matrix operates. And these are basically the 12 organ channels, and the 5 phases or the 5 elements are some of the most basic features of traditional Chinese medicine. And we want our graduates to be oriented to these things. Although one important thing to say is that most people who are learning Qigong are not going to be very interested in a lot of information. They're mostly going to be interested in the practices. But we want you to be trained as to the nature of these theoretical foundations of Chinese medicine, because sometimes it'll come up, sometimes you can say, and we're not going to go into the details here in our class today, but I just need you to know that, we're oriented to the 5 elements and the 12 channels and the qi and so forth. So people can actually, we're going to train people to do 2 things. One is reflect on tradition, but the other is to be aware of the science and to bring those all together into a kind of credibility that just can't be denied.
Wonderful. So module 11 then goes in understand the role of being hospitable in the healing paradigm of Qigong to support recovery and renewal. Then module 12 goes into the 5 elements as you just described. Module 13, explore contemporary Yang Sheng and how to support students in creating a holistic life plan using the circle of life system. Share a little bit more about some of those empowerment paradigms you're offering.
Yeah, so it's interesting that all the ancient cultures have a system of wellness, of well-being maximization. And here in the Western world, starting back in the 70s, there was this idea of sustaining the wisdom of our grandmothers, which was basically kind of disappearing as the marvel of modern medicine was sort of overwhelming everyone. And so in that wellness, in the tradition of sustaining traditional wellness ideas from both our grandmothers and from ancient cultures, myself and colleagues created what is called the Circle of Life, which is a wellness methodology. And we will be teaching the participants in this program how to use wellness-oriented language that is in a kind of, shall we say, formulated systematic approach to weave into the dialogue of a practice session. So in the dialogue of a practice session, we might weave in a little traditional Chinese medicine language. Then we might weave in a little physiology. Very, very simple physiology. The most important physiology is very simple physiology, and so it's easy to learn and easy to discuss. And then the other thing that we can weave in to our practice sessions as we're doing the practices, is shall we say, phrases that reflect on, decision making regarding nutrition, say, for instance, or decision making relative to difficult relationships, or decision making regarding being more, shall we say, on top of our finances, decision making associated with perhaps making a career change, decision making relative to understanding the power of recreation in our lives and getting exposed to nature and so forth. So the power of these practice sessions that a person can do for themselves, or that a person can learn to lead a practice session, is to be able to use the practices to create an atmosphere, and then to load that atmosphere with storytelling about human empowerment. It's really a marvel.
Hmm. There's so much in each of these. And Module 14, Inspire an Ancient Breakthrough, One Cure for One Disease. Module 15 goes into Taoist and Buddhist philosophies to stabilize your consciousness, generate the elixir within, and become an authentic person. Module 16, go deeper into the circle of life system of Yang Sheng to enhance your skills as a Qigong teacher and practitioner. Then there's another guest teacher, Dr. Gail Hubach, on accessible medical Qigong and the mysterious made simple. Anything you want to share about that guest teacher?
Yes, so Dr. Hubach is an acupuncture Chinese doctor from Austin, Texas. She is a wizard in her own right. She's one of the people that has basically gone through the training that our participants in this program will be going through. And she is a prolific teacher. She's very oriented to, well, she wrote a book actually about a particular approach to Chinese medicine, which is just another amazing sort of worldview idea, which she'll share something on. But it's interesting that she knows so much, and yet she has chosen to call her session Making the Esoteric available to average citizens. So it's one more time where we get to see how deep and rich the tradition is, and yet how accessible and available the actual implementation in our lives is.
Beautiful. Then we go Module 18, pinpoint common situations that can derail your students' Qigong practice. And Module 19, activate Spirit Qi, the golden elixir as the mysterious medicine of the eternal self. Want to share a little bit more about the golden elixir?
Yeah, so, all of the great ancient cultures have this idea of when you are a cultivated character, that the choices that you make in your life will contribute to your healthy longevity. And of course, in part, that's because of the choices that a cultivated character makes. But it also has to do with the fact that people who are highly cultivated typically tend to be very compassionate and service oriented. And so all of these are the simple choices that we make in our life, as well as the ethical qualities of our character, are all contributing to some kind of promise. And a lot of people will say, well, but wait a minute, life is random. And, it's okay to have that experience because it definitely feels like that. But it's also true that all these cultures have some kind of a story to tell about aligning with values, and then living into those values, having some kind of marvelous effect. And one of my favorite lines from all the great Chinese texts on these things it goes like this. It's just a little phrase. It's called the efficacy of accommodation, the efficacy of accommodation. So if you think to yourself for a minute, how often do you disagree with someone? And then how efficient is it? Is there an efficient way to be able to be in a disagreement? And what happens if you decide to notice, and I feel like I've got a lot of experience with this, to notice in my own life, what happens if I allow myself to be less annoyed and more like a fan of a person. Like I'm a real fan of, this imaginary person who's here. I'm a real fan of yours. And I'm not saying I disagree with you and I need to get you to believe what I believe. What I'm saying is I'm a real fan of you as a person. And that's a really interesting point of view that you have come up with. And so that's kind of like accommodating. And what about when you get bad news? Can I accommodate bad news? What happens when things don't go my way? Is there something that do I benefit somehow by just becoming annoyed and frustrated? Or can I, and then what it really leads to, Stephen, is this beautiful question that's always useful to reflect on, and I'll reflect on it now, is the value of understanding what I can and what I cannot control. And where am I going to put my energy? Am I going to put my energy into trying to fix things that are clearly out of my control? Or can I go to the things that are within my control? And those are often going to be simple things like cleaning my house and growing a garden and making compost and aligning with like-minded friends and becoming a part of a community of shared values, or what sometimes people call a sangha. I don't know, I might be rambling, but I get excited about how powerful these practices are and how many ways they empower individuals to become more of an expression of themselves. And so the golden elixir is this coordination of our behaviors, our attitudes, our actions, our relationships, and all of this is conspiring along with breath and body, managing the body, managing the breath, managing the mind, deflecting distraction, cultivating focus. And that all rolls up into something called the golden elixir of longevity and immortality. In the Chinese tradition, there's this idea of immortality, which is really basically aligning with one's essential nature, because if you're aligned with your essential nature, then you're not so much aligning with the circumstances of the period of history that you're in, but you're instead aligning with the aspect of yourself which transcends all historic periods and is almost like a kind of eternal, an eternal aspect of our being that has so much more knowledge than any aspect of our local being.
Beautiful. And then finally, Module 20 is all about graduation, celebration, refining your skills, building your business, and creating deeper strategies for teaching live classes. So it's going to be a very comprehensive, very powerful deep dive into medical Qigong, really from one of the best people in the world. You're in great hands. Roger has refined this over time, and he's really giving you the best synthesis out there. So if you choose to move forward, you will get not only the 20 90-minute live sessions with Roger, which includes time to ask your questions. You'll get recordings of every session, both video and audio, as well as word-for-word transcripts. There's weekly practices for home and a Facebook community to support you and deepen your experience, as well as small group time to connect with other participants. Roger's also been very generous with extra bonuses. There's a whole Yang Sheng masterclass, a contemporary version of the ancient wellness system of yogis and Qigong or Qi masters. There's a whole 7-part video program, which includes multiple Circle of Life coach approach classes. There's a 22-page article mapping the essence of the Qigong and Tai Chi universe. And there's also a special bonus you get if you sign up by the end of today, which is called The Most Profound Medicine from Roger on mind-body practice and the medicine within. You want to share anything about that special bonus folks get if they sign up today?
Yeah, so this is it's a book basically that we've made into an electronic book or a digital book, and the first part of it goes into the the kinds of qigong. So there's Buddhist qigong, Taoist qigong. There's martial associated with kung fu qigong. There's very super meditative versions of qigong. There's very active versions of qigong. And there's the Buddhist version, and there's the Taoist version. And so it kind of outlines these different, and medical Qigong, of course, it outlines these different versions or approaches to Qigong and some of their, shall we say, theoretical biases or points of view. And then the second portion of this book is all about the physiology. And so while we can go to a certain amount of detail in the course, for those of you who are interested in really digging into, well, how does it influence the lymphatic system kind of into the finer detail, and how does it influence the neurotransmitters into the finer detail and so forth. So it's a very powerful document for people who are interested in deepening their relationship with the body of knowledge. And of course, given the fact that we're offering this as a bonus that people will get, I think they'll probably get it pretty close to right away for enrolling right away. Then you can get a kind of a running start on all of the stuff that we're going to be jumping into in the 20 modules.
Amazing program, great bonus, and it's we've kept the investment accessible, given all the benefits also professionally for this as well. It's 5 payments of $395. You save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $17.99. The course is going to begin on May 20th and run Tuesdays at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. But even if you can't make the live times, you can still get the full value with the recordings, the transcripts, and the community as well. There's great testimonials all over the page. Again, it's at medicalqigonghealer.com. Some of the brightest lights and transformation from Deepak Chopra to Jack Canfield to Burjon Borisenko, strongly endorsing Roger and his work. So you're in really the best hands possible, and you're going to get a training of a lifetime in this in the medical Qigong arena. So again, it's all laid out at medicalqigonghealer.com, and you'll get that special PDF bonus if you sign up by midnight tonight. The Most Profound Medicine. So Roger, we're just at the end of our time. Anything still on your heart you want to share with folks who are considering doing the full training with you?
Yeah, two things very briefly. One is that because in our culture, we think of medicine that is something that you get from doctors to solve diagnostic problems. One of the things that we're going to do in not every, but almost every one of these modules is talk about a particular diagnosis. So we'll be talking about heart disease, we'll be talking about diabetes, we'll be talking about obesity, we'll be talking about insomnia and Parkinson's or neurological challenges, anxiety and depression. So part of the curriculum is actually to gain a little bit more understanding as a person. We're not doctors, we're educators, but educators are allowed to be educated, and educators are allowed to educate people. And so it's really important, we feel, to do a little exploration of these diagnostic areas, even though Qigong doesn't really need to be directed to a diagnosis, because all Qigong helps all of the person. That's what the whole concept of the one medicine and the one cure is all about. And then the second thing that I'll say is that I'm just Well, like it's thrilled is a good word. Thrilled, enthusiastic, turned on, inspired by the fact that we have this opportunity to collaborate with the Shift Network to train. Uh, you know, let's have thousands of people in this course to train a lot of people to both practice for themselves more efficiently with more knowledge, and also to bring these practices to others, should you be inclined to do so.
Hmm. Well, what a beautiful offering, Roger, and thank you for just a lifetime of beautiful service in this arena. I know there's profound personal benefits, societal benefits, healthcare system benefits. You've really helped to pioneer of an integrative vision for the future of how we do internal medicine and external medicine. So thank you so much, Roger. Thank you so much for all joining us today, and I know you'll be in great hands if you choose to move forward with the program at medicalqigonghealer.com. So thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wish you
Many
well.